perhaps more willing or more able to take, and what are the range of methods that could be used to get into it, rather than just assuming that there's only one way to do it. They far more likely nowadays, instead of sitting down on a one-to-one basis just, to have assessed the need, or to have assessed whether or not that is the right thing to do, and perhaps instead help to create a toy library for the handicapped, or help to be part of a community group that's providing for needs of the area, or to be a facilitator to a play group development, something of this sort. And I think we sometimes hold ourselves up by saying, oh, it's all status quo. We do have the medical profession as a millstone, in a sense, and the feeling of the consultant as being the one who knows best, instead of the other sense of consultant as the one who goes along to learn and be alongside and then to enable. And I think we have to be realistic about the positives as well. And okay, social work education at the moment has nothing to write home about, but I think it possibly is going in a better direction now.
Could I add something to that? Because I personally think you can only take risks when you know that you can do something well. I mean, I take risks in social work because I think that basically I'm a good social worker, if I want to. And it's when I have it, I can throw it away. And I think that training has, first of all, to give people a sense of competence. And then when they've got that basic sense of competence, they can do it. And I think the best risk teachers in teaching are the ones who are saying. And I think people who do these paintings around the wall do the best paintings of this time when their basic skills. Would you agree about that, though? You know, when you can sit down and draw something, you can then throw away your techniques and take risks with what you're doing.
I'd like to talk about the introduction this afternoon. I thought that was fascinating. The first thing you did was use strategy story to see you still be there at the end. And I found that fascinating. You couldn't have done that with anybody else in the room. You know, it had to be done with the person who everybody comes especially to hear. And then everybody sat down and said, you did it the wrong way, you might remember this. You know, now nobody...
Even if you jump out right to the end, don't make it.
But you know, yes, it was going on here just now. You haven't heard what we're doing in Scotland. Listen to us. That's the point. But we could only do that because we knew that you would be standing at the end of it. And I think this is what people can't do with each other. Because not many of us would be standing when we got all that.
Well, we would, you know. We would if we took the chance.
Yes, but this, when we're talking about what we should do, I was fascinated earlier, Kate, when you said at the beginning you've been learning and then it all turned into intellectual exercise. Now, I was aware that at the beginning I was uncomfortable and I had become comfortable. And I hadn't realized until you said it that I was comfortable because I was no longer being emotionally involved in the thing. I could do it all up here. And, you know, I think this is the sort of stuff we've got to go through ourselves and have other people to go through. And really, I'm hoped that I really think you come along more often. All those things you said about agenda building and, you know, how to organize a group and how to make sure that everybody in the group's agenda is going to be there. Because I really must, if I may, you know, a secret. Well, these two friends of mine were attacking you, they're really attacking me. But, you know, we've just been through a whole setup, the first week of this situation, in which I've been in for 2 years, and 2 weeks was joining me. And so we've had a week in which, you know, I knew what it was all about, of what I did. And, you know, that you were watching the end of that week, and I was fascinated sitting in the back saying, oh, that's me. But, you know, this is the sort of stuff we have to do a lot of learning. And that, I think, my people come to me and don't go on with things and don't take risks. That's okay.
Yeah, I think that without being disrespectful, this is a point in a way. But it's been very good to meet you, and you are an expert. It's been very good to hear it. But there is expertise in this group here, which could be as valid, which could be as good for the learning experience. We haven't actually found that. We've reached a point now which is becoming interesting, it's becoming a learning experience. And it's a reflection of the question I have is why we reach it now and it's time to go. And I think this is the point, rather.
It's not right about us, but the point is, well, what about Max? Has Max really learned the lesson? The way I've learned it. You can say that you've got to teach social workers not to be professionals. Did you get part of the answer from the lady? I spent 10 years screaming with anguish at one of my colleagues. Yeah, I wasn't miserable. I just lost a partner. And I wouldn't scream with anguish now. I mean, that's not the way of the training myself. I think that the change you're looking for, you can't quite see because being characteristic of yourself, you're always 15 years ahead.
I get the idea of coming here and just to say to some fellow here to take back to the States a few stories about this, that we're going to leave here, what happens? We're supposed to be here to talk about change. What change? Where? I mean, we're going to leave this room, and what are we going to do about change? We talked about communication in order to create change. How are we going to communicate? What's been said about the possibility of communicating to each other, ways and means of which each project has managed to create a small piece of change. We're going to walk out of here once again with nothing concrete about to happen. We must get something concrete.
Yes, I think you put your finger on the very good thing. No groups, no meetings are worth a damn unless something useful comes out of it.
Right.
And I think that this is where my own experience is that if we have a group of experts, and I hate the word, of people who have got a common goal, then you must get, this is part of technique. I know it sounds stuffy, I know it sounds professional, but by golly, there's something in learning group dynamics. There's something in getting onto a common denominator, a common theme, and letting people work on it and grow together. Unless you've got these skills, you see, the meetings are no good. And I think you're really, in a way, you're more professional than I am at the moment, because you're saying, hi buddy, I don't give a shit about what you've learned. I want to know what have we learned. Right. And that's fine. I can understand that. Now, I give you an example of where, if I was living in Glasgow, I'd say exactly what you're saying. And I'd say, well, we've got to begin to structure. We're back to where we came in, you see. I know a lot about organizing systems for change. But you've got to be the people who organize the system. If you want to have regularly scheduled meetings here or any other organization which will bring people of other disciplines together, now's the time to set it up. You know, I'm with you.
Well, to take that up, myself and two people sitting next to me are about to structure a newsletter via Sacro, which I think most people here know. And the newsletter is intended to be a forum, a talking shop. And it will be a limited circulation for people similar to the kind of select audience this is here. People who are prepared to effect change in their society. And one of the things we intend doing is collating a list of people in order to send out this newsletter, in order that a forum, a discussion forum, further than and more expansive than a mere group of people in the room. And also to take into the discussion, the people we're talking about, the people, the punters down at the end of the line. Where are they? Where are the punters in the streets? Where are they? Now they have got to come in at some stage. To do that, we've got to structure something more than a group meeting in a third line centre in Circuit Hall Street, where you go up to East House and down the Gallagher and tell them where it is. They would know how to get here. So you've got to get across to the punters in the street as well as the so-called quote-unquote experts, etc. And hopefully this particular newsletter we're setting up will be able to go part of the way to do that. Well, I would like to see more communication going on amongst the so-called professionals instead of stabbing each other in the back or sticking their head in the sand and not wanting to know.
Of course, this group has a kind of existence. I don't know whether you know that, Maxwell, but we had a meeting. Well, a lot of the people who were at this meeting, at the previous meetings, were supposed to get an edited version of our last meeting. That hasn't come around yet. It will be coming. So this group has a peculiar kind of vague identity. Has met, or members of this group have met in this room or this premises many times, about 3 or 4 times. Okay. So it's a curious amorphous thing which has a vague
yes, but again,
shape.
the system theory which I does organize your thinking in terms of action, you could get some mileage out of this group by, as Fergus says, they meet occasionally. Now, there's nothing to prevent them taking on some responsible function of setting up ad hoc groups for your punters or anything else, which would be then fed back into this meeting, so that you then begin to get information sharing by setting up ad hoc groups, which answer questions, bring them back here, and so your information sharing and your knowledge grows in some kind of central setting. That would be one technique that's obvious, but it's hard to get people to organize and be responsible for it.
Well, we have been trying to do this over a period of about 2 years with the Growing Up in Scotland movement. And when Kay asked me if I could find people who would come today to this seminar from the other side, from England, the first thing I thought of was just to get the list of names of all the people who were interested in growing up in Scotland and sent it to the Third Eye, and a very large number of them have in fact turned up today. And we have had great difficulty in getting a structure, getting ourselves organised, and we keep thinking we're dying on our feet, but there's enough of a spirit there to keep the thing going. And we're more of a spirit than a structure, I think. But many of us are doing small things which we then can get in touch with one another about. So we have a kind of corporate identity which we can't define. And we don't know whether we'll expand or not, but we cling together and we somehow survive.
Can I suggest some sort of central list, some central register be gathered of people who are interested in what we're talking about?
Well, I think everybody could scarcely leave their name, but I think the important thing for me is that while I'm interested in sacral, while I'm interested in what's happening in government, and I'm interested in something else, essentially what I'm interested in is the way in which this society of ours is going to change and what steps we can make to make that change happen. Not just in one area, not in a specialist area, but in its totality. And that has to be the central commitment, I think.
The central commitment has to be realistic and acknowledge we cannot change the world. We can only do it in bits and pieces.
No, but I think that the examination of change and the nature of change is one of the things that I wanted Max here about, because I think that's how we can learn ourselves and how we can change our own ideas and how we can help other people to learn and change their ideas. Because change is happening much more quickly now than it ever did before. It used to be, over a generation, you didn't need to change your ideas. Now, I don't know about you, but I find that every 5 years, my thinking has to alter radically in order to keep up with what's happening. And I can't accept easy answers anymore, either in prison reform or, housing planning or anything else, because, everything's happening so quickly.
It comes back, I think, to Max's point of the contradictions which exist at the same time as the bureaucracy is increasing, and the alienation of advanced capitalism has never been more evident, and I would say that it is to my eyes in Scotland as it is today. At the same time, and going along with it are more rumblings than ever were. Little isolated things, people becoming conscious of the problem, and so it's really Max's point. It's Max's point.
Okay, well,
I think we should let Max perhaps tie some ends together now.
Well, I feel we must go, I'd like to thank you, first of all, and I think you're really touching on what I'd like to emphasize, that if I've learned today, and I think I have, I would want from follow-up, I want some more hard data of the actual success you have and so on, and what you can do in the way of organizing some kind of better communication network and potential for growth. But the focus is fascinating, that I've spent my life fighting the medical profession, and I've been cast today as a doctor, quite a new experience. And if it's any satisfaction to Max, one of my greatest things was being thrown out of Oregon by Governor Hatfield as a communist. I think that if you lose your job, you're probably doing a hell of a lot of good at the same time. And I certainly did me a lot of good, because people paid a lot of attention to what I was doing that was so outrageous that I had to be thrown out of the state. which was simply the same thing as you. I was trying to apply liberal concepts. That, of course, was a very good bit of publicity. But what I've got out of today is essentially the humility of the people who are doing the most significant things, not the arrogance of the professors and the people who have the power, but the positive changes which are probably going to come. They'll have to come from all levels, because the power still is in the politicians and the people at the top of the hierarchy, but they're bound to be affected by results. Now, if your project and your project and your project are all getting results, and you can prove that you can do a lot without, this is an age of accountability, and if you can show that you can run an effective hospital on peanuts compared to, let's say, the professionally sponsored ones, that's going to affect politicians and power figures and everyone. So to me, the focus has really been on what can the man in the street, the parent of the child at school, what can these quote ordinary people do? And I know we get case started on China at the drop of a hat. It's where the ordinary people are coming in to give backing and interest to change. It's their world we're trying to change. We're not bothered about the Rockefellers and so on. All our problems in terms of change basically are in the problems of great need. And I think this is the right focus. I'm taking away a nice pleasant image of Glasgow, much more humble than Edinburgh in the experience I've had, and much more, I think, effective if you really are mobilizing these forces. And I like your input, but don't let's just talk. Let's see how we can evolve and snowball a really significant group. And this is where you get on then to, how do we begin to lobby, and how do we get on to, the people with power. So that, thank you very much.
Well, can I say thank you to Max for coming and express something that I know everybody feels. We just wish you could come on.
There's going to be a demonstration held in Edinburgh against the control wing in Inverness prison. I hope I'm not really taking advantage of the last 10 minutes talking, I think. And I thought that maybe there'd be some people here that'd be quite happy, or else be in a position to be a part of the crowd in this demonstration. And I get some things printed here that are going to be, they're going to be made into leaflets, and they'll be getting sort of passing about the streets and stuff. If people could just, there's only a couple, but if some people could just read them briefly, and if they'd be happy to take part in this demonstration, then maybe they could leave me their names and phone numbers or addresses. Thank you.